Hi, I'm Tracy Ferrell, and I've been at Google for 10 years, all of them in SRE, and I'm currently part of the Ads SRE organization. Before Google, I was also part of many teams that would be considered SRE, and so reliability has obviously been one of my passions.
Hi, I'm Vartika Agarwal. I've been with Google for 9 years. I'm a technical program manager in the cloud security org. I've also been a backend engineer for a long time, and hence reliability is very close to my heart. I'm very excited to be partnering with Tracy here today to talk about the reliability maturity model that we developed at Google and also published as part of the cloud blog and also a Usenix paper. The evolution of this paper has been quite a journey and incorporates our collective learnings.
Thanks, Vartika. Our story actually starts, I think, about 6 years ago. And Vartika and I were working on a critical Google product, Vartika on the development side and I on the SRE side. And we were leading a project to remediate reliability following actually several huge outages, which impacted not only our product, but other products at Google. And throughout the project, we had representatives from all areas of the organization. We had development, SRE, we had program management, product management, user design, privacy, etc. And actually later on, a couple of years later, we ran into each other and we were reminiscing about this project, not only about its success, but more importantly about the high bar for reliability that it produced in the organization and then sustained over several years. We matched stories about other products and organizations, both inside and outside of Google, where reliability had been the focus, but the reliability didn't stick after the project was over. In those cases, usually you have to run a remediation program every 2 to 3 years to reset the reliability bar. And so we really wondered, why in this case did reliability stick?
And upon reflection, we realized that the durability of reliability came because the entire organization had it as a main focus. All of the different functions were coming together and treating reliability as if it were the number one feature. It was woven into the fabric of how the organization worked. It was almost deep-rooted into the culture. In fact, it was more important than just looking at the operational metrics, the dashboards, and also even the software architecture. And so we thought to ourselves, what is this long-lasting reliability, and can we share our learnings with the other groups? And this is where our model started to emerge. From this point onwards, we realized that we should be looking at how to measure reliability, maturity, and then also the attributes that contribute to them.
So we brainstormed about the attributes that contributed to the long-term success in that project and that team that Vartika and I were on. These attributes should reflect the organization's commitment to reliability, but it also should reflect how the organization shows up on a day-to-day basis and engages in reliability work. And the list we came up with, as you can see, is on the slide. I'll go into a little bit more detail for you. So first off is operational processes. This is the basics. These are the metrics and the resulting regular activities the organization takes to maintain production health. These are things like writing postmortems, checking on metrics and trends, attending to postmortem AIs, etc. Risk management. This is the identification, evaluation, classification, and potentially resolution of these reliability risks, which are those future unrealized outages that you haven't had yet. Productivity. What's the perception about developer productivity and the impact that all the reliability efforts have on that velocity? System complexity. This is obviously the architecture of the system, but it's also that dependency graph, both upstream and downstream from the product. People. What are people's values concerning reliability, and what are the team ethos about how they engage in reliability? Leadership. What's the commitment of leadership across the organization to reliability? And this can't be siloed in just one team like the SRE team. It's like, what's the commitment of leadership across all those organizations that I talked about earlier? And finally, visibility. Can the organization acknowledge and celebrate reliability successes as equally as they can feature successes? All right, so now that we had a list of attributes, how can we define the level of maturity that they reflect? And so Vartika and I decided to lean into a model that's used at Google to describe other aspects of organizational maturity. This model has 5 phases, and we really leaned into the terms because they're very descriptive. The levels of maturity are absent, reactive, proactive, strategic, and visionary. So it should be noted, I have a bell curve on the slide now. It shows how products may distribute in an organization across this curve of reliability maturity. And it should be noted that even at Google, organizations will exist on this bell curve of maturity. The cost of maturity does go up significantly as the organization travels to the right. And more importantly, the cost to maintain that level of maturity also goes up. So it's critical that you, as you roll this out into your organization, consciously decide to be at a level based on the product requirements and the customer expectations. It doesn't make sense cost-wise to have all products on the high end of this maturity curve. All right, so let's now walk through the details of the phases of the model.
So let's start with the absent stage. The absent stage is one which is to the left of the spectrum and one where organizations don't focus on reliability at all. This usually applies to products that might be in the prototype phase or in the experimental phases. And part of the reason is that they are really focused on fast turnarounds. In these scenarios, issues are usually found by end users instead of the teams themselves. We don't recommend this stage. The only reason is because it leads to bad user experience and low confidence in the product. We suggest that teams and organizations move to the right of the maturity model as soon as possible and get to the next stage, which is the reactive stage. Although we'd like them to move even further, but this would be the next evolution. During the reactive phase, we are seeing organizations who focus on reliability usually when outages are found. They are basically putting together operational metrics and post-mortem items to respond to issues that are found during recent outages. And they do this by sporadic follow-through without the need to invest in long-term initiatives to fix reliability. Most of the solutions that are found through postmortems, operational metrics, are focused on tactical and band-aid type solutions, and hence they are not very durable or stick with the efforts. These things are usually done by heroic efforts or temporary shift in priorities to get to the goals. Products that are in the pre-launch phases or might be in long-term maintenance might be okay to be in the reactive stage. But for anything that's critical to the business, we really hope that they move to the right of the maturity model and get further into the maturity as they go along. The next phase is the proactive phase. This is the phase where we are starting to look at the quality of the metrics. We are ensuring that postmortems are written, reviewed, and action items are resolved, likely in an automated way. We also start to see that the cross-functional teams come together to do reliability reviews. They are taking risk assessments into account. They are looking at system dependencies. The whole point of this phase is that teams are starting to prioritize potential reliability issues that might emerge in the future. And they have regular operational processes focused on making sure that happens. Metrics, SLOs are reviewing this data on an ongoing basis. So are they looking at system dependencies. They are also making sure that any degradations are addressed so that future issues don't arise. Design reviews are focused on reliability metrics and risk assessment, again as a forward-looking principle. And these are all embedded in different parts of the software workflow to make sure the systems are durable. We have seen that this is the state that most organizations end up in, especially if they are business critical or they have a large blast radius. And it's okay to be in this stage, even though it might take several years to get from reactive to proactive, because moving any further takes a very high cost, and it's very important for organizations to be intentional about that change. Moving from proactive to strategic could take several years, and it's very important that organizations are intentional about this change. And that's because it takes significant amount of strategy, persistent, and non-trivial investment to get to this stage. In this stage, we start to see that there's focus on smart mitigation techniques like automated rollbacks, canarying, feature flags. We start to summarize meta trends across the different matrices, and that's how we are evolving risk for future changes. We are avoiding single points of failures. We are putting together architectural teams that are looking at graceful degradations and scenarios where they can isolate risks in the future. And in this stage, we are not worried about celebrating lack of outages either. We don't knock on wood for another outage to not happen. The reason is because at this phase, organizations are starting to look at classes of risks and they want to make sure that they are mitigated holistically. They are going after systemic reliability. And that means they might have to make overall changes to architecture, products, and processes. Re-architecture of the entire system is not uncommon in this phase. And that's to make sure the positioning of reliability is changed for the future. This level is appropriate for products that want high availability, but again, as long as they keep the effort and the cost in mind. From here on, we move to the visionary state. This state is very hard to find, and that's because it's almost like a nirvana state. In this state, the systems start to become self-healing. Productivity, development velocity, and reliability start to go hand in hand. And organizations get to a point where they've developed enough practices, learnings of their own, where they can share those with others inside and outside the company, where they are writing papers, where they are talking about reliability strategies or tactics that bring long-term impact. Most organizations actually will never get to this state because they are not incentivized for that investment. And that's totally okay. But we do see this state in products like the airline industry or even at NASA who can't afford to drop reliability. Having described all of the different phases, Tracy and I thought to ourselves, what might be a good way to validate these across the Google teams? And this is when we started a journey of interviews with the different teams to start to understand what difficulties they face in maturing and moving forward from one phase to another. And we did find several examples to go along with our journey of reliability maturity.
All right, so the first story is about a product where end users are highly dependent on the reliability, and it ties directly to user trust for the entire Google product set. So just a side note, as I go through these stories and case studies, focus on the slide and it'll take you through the journey of the reliability model that these various organizations transferred through. So this first product, reliability was the top of mind for this Google organization for years, and the product was held as the gold standard of reliability for other Google teams. However, over the years, new features and options were added to the service. Complexity and the number of dependencies increased significantly, and slowly the organization became more and more focused on features and actually lost sight of their rich reliability past. As a result, the high level of reliability didn't come as freely and easily as it did when the product was simpler. The general feeling was actually that they had conquered reliability. The SRE team was still the premier SRE team, but one team can't carry the entire organization. And so to turn the ship around, the organization had to be intentional about their reliability posture and overall practices. They had to pull reliability back in to be the top feature for that product and raise the awareness across the entire organization and not just SRE. It took several years for the product and the organization to move back into a strategic mindset. And so the lesson here is, if you think you're done, think again. Reliability work is never done. Our second story is about an infrastructure service And it started as a small, well-defined few crisp APIs. And one key member of the team, a product architect, understood the entire system well and ensured that all things ran smoothly by ensuring design decisions were sound. And he actually led each major incident and made sure there were rapid mitigations. This one person who understood the entire system was able to predict what could impact stability. And so if you think about it, the organization itself was reactive while this one person was strategic. And it actually worked for a number of years. But when they left the team, the system complexity grew by leaps and bounds. And over the course of a few years, there were many critical user-facing and internal outages. Organizational leaders initiated both short and long-term reliability programs to restore the stability of the system, basically re-architecting the system in the process over the course of several years. The teams also recognized that to sustain reliability, they had to go beyond engineering solutions and implement cultural changes, including making reliability their number one feature, which you've mentioned many times. As a result, the organization evolved from a reactive to a strategic mindset. And inside Google, we actually have a saying that says no heroes, which means no one can be a hero forever. The third story is about a new user-facing product focused on adding features and definitely growing their user base. Unfortunately, the laser focus on user features led to high tech debt and reliability issues. Now, there were many early warning signs that they were not on the right path. They had many small and medium outages, but those were soon forgotten as soon as the next set of users was in sight. So to turn the tide, much of the code had to actually be rewritten and re-architected to reach a sustainable state. Basic processes were implemented to ensure reliability issues were addressed quickly. And they also began to incentivize reliability throughout the organization, constantly reminding the organization about the importance of reliability and retaining these new users that they were acquiring. So reactive in the end was still the right level for this product, but one can embrace reliability principles and designs early on to avoid these large technical debt loads. So here are our three stories. We validated to some extent our model that it makes sense and it resonated with the teams that we spoke to. And we started to roll it out across Google. And we encountered some pitfalls, and I wanted to share those pitfalls with you, so in case when you roll it out with your organization, you can be on the lookout for these. So there are three of them. The first one is people wanted the model to be a checklist or a grade that they were given for a product. And it's not a prescriptive list of things to do. It's more about the awareness and the engagement the organization has with reliability. And also, it's not about winning or getting to the top or getting the top grade. It's about changing the culture in a sustainable way to ensure reliability really sticks. Secondly, organizations thought that they would land in one phase of the model, all in, say, reactive or all in proactive. But that's actually not how it works. Typically, an organization will have some attributes that are reactive, maybe the majority of them in proactive, and then maybe even one in strategic. So an organization should look at across all of these attributes and combine them for an overall perspective of where they actually are on the continuum. But to improve, you can address individual attributes separately, but it is really a holistic view about where you are across the continuum. And third, one size does not fit all. Each product should be at a level that is appropriate for its life cycle and user base. So finally, how is it that you could take and apply this model to your organization?
Before we wrap up, I'd like to quickly outline the process it takes for an organization to measure its reliability maturity. The process is actually fairly simple. It starts by the organization understanding its current state based on its culture, priorities, and processes. We call it the study state. From here on, we ask the organizational leaders to assess where they want to be, and that's done by them honestly taking a snapshot of how the organization is doing based on interviews, observations, or surveys. We do recommend that organizations take a subjective questionnaire approach where they can assess different attributes of reliability versus going with a checklist, which is very objective. This helps the organization determine where they are on the spectrum, and from here on, they can figure out how they would like to improve. The reason we tell them to do a questionnaire is because, as Tracy said earlier, you may not actually fall into one particular phase or one particular score. Most likely, the organization lies somewhere within this spectrum and may have to pick and choose which attributes it wants to focus on to bring about the reliability change. Again, please keep in mind that even changing 1/9 in the SLO may require a lot of cost, and the organization may not be incentivized for that investment. So it's very important to understand where you are on that curve and where you would like to be and how much effort you're willing to put in for that. Some parting thoughts before we close. It takes a village to bring about change, and hence it's very important for the entire organization to understand the importance of reliability. And changing culture is very hard, so it cannot be done with penalties or edicts. End of the day, it needs to be a mindset change. Finally, it's very important to remember that this is a journey and the business is ever evolving itself. So you cannot just make reliability changes and put that on the shelf for it to be maintained perpetually. It takes time and effort to maintain reliability. Last but not the least, reliability brings trust, and hence it's the foundation for the success of any business. Thank you.